Welcome to Live Stream Monday, Kitchen Witchery for winter time. Just gonna wait a second, see if anybody's gonna come on. So before I start talking about actual kitchen witchery for winter, I want to talk about what kitchen witchery actually is. So when I talk about kitchen witchery, I'm basically talking about like working in the kitchen. So like it's like kitchen magic, and that doesn't mean like you have to be in the kitchen, or it doesn't mean that it's just like cooking magic. It can mean a lot of different things, but for tonight, for what we're going to talk about, I want to talk about kitchen witchery as it is like cooking, sort of. So one of the cool things about kitchen witchery, I'm going to pull you a little closer. I feel like you're so far away from me. One of the cool things about kitchen witchery is that it's so practical. You don't really need a correspondence book to work it. You don't need like what does cinnamon mean? We think about what cinnamon means. Like, what does cinnamon bring to our working? What does it taste like? If it's spicy, it might be correlated with fire. If it has like an earthy taste, kind of like basil, that often is like associated with earth. So we're able to kind of suss out the correspondences on our own. Also, when we are cooking with intention, we can visualize these intentions. We can make choices based on our intentions, and we can also like stir, and we can also do the actual cooking. We can fill that with intention. So for example, if our intention is to bring something in, we can stir clockwise. If it's to banish or get rid of something, we can stir counterclockwise. So we're able to bring these very witchy concepts into the kitchen. Now let's actually kind of talk about what we would do for winter kitchen witchery. So with winter, when we cook, we want to hold on, let me minimize that. We want to focus on foods and techniques of cooking that increase the warming qualities. So we want to basically increase the warming qualities of our food. Now, this might mean choosing foods with more warming qualities. It might mean cooking a little bit differently. So I'm going to explain really quickly kind of what I mean by warming qualities. So warming food. So we choose our food because we want it to have those warming properties, and we want these warming properties so that we're like ingesting these foods that will warm us from the inside out. So it isn't even, obviously most of us have heaters. However, our ancestors did not have heaters. So when you are making this choice to eat these kinds of foods, it's eating with, I know I talk about seasonal eating kind of a lot, but it also allows you to eat seasonably, because warming foods are foods that you normally see and eat during wintertime, like winter squash, root veggies, citrus, beans, animal-based foods. So these foods are the foods that like kind of our ancestors probably ate during their winter times, because again, we want to warm our body. We also want to pay attention to how we are cooking our foods. And I know I'm saying all of this, but I want you to think about how we normally cook our food. Like during the wintertime, we don't do a lot of grilling, right? We do a lot of roasting. We do some baking. We might be boiling or braising our food. And we tend to do this because when we cook on low for a long time, it increases those warming benefits. Usually will break the meat down, or break the food down internally, and make it easier to digest. So the cool thing about it making it easier to digest is that means our body has all of this extra energy. It's not working super hard on like digesting all of the food, so it allows us more physical energy to warm our body. Again, we do have heaters and such things nowadays, But when we are aligning with like the energy of our ancestors, it helps us connect with with cycles. And so it allows us to connect with this also with the cycle of winter. So that is why we kind of choose to we choose to like select our foods and select our cooking methods a little bit intentionally. So now that we talked about like the mundane parts of that, I want to talk about how we can put this knowledge into practice. You can just cook the things that we just talked about: winter foods, root veggies, winter squash, citruses, beans, things that take a lot longer to actually grow. So these foods, these vegetables, etc., are spending more time in the ground, or spending a lot of time growing, and that will make it easier for our body to become warm and break it down so that we can absorb those warming qualities. So that's one way. You can just cook the things that we talked about right now. Another way is to dissect a recipe. Now, if you know me, I really like analyzing things. I like breaking things down so that we can build them back up. So you can go ahead and you can dissect a recipe. You can look for recipes with those sorts of foods, the vegetable foods, animal-based foods, and the cooking techniques like the boiling and the braising. And when I say braising sounds super freaking fancy. Like, oh, I'm going to have some braised beef. Really, I mean, when I say braising, when I braise something, I basically mean I put a bunch of shit in a crock pot and let it sit there all day. That's what braising is. So you can choose a recipe with either some of these foods or some of these cooking techniques, and you can take a look at all of the foods in the recipe and think about what qualities, besides these warming qualities, like what qualities this might bring to the table. So to the table, literally. If there are spices, for example, if you have basil in your recipe, what do you feel basil represents? Like, what is basil associated with? And again, you can look up your book of correspondences and find out what it means per the book of correspondences, or you can use your common sense. Now, basil has a very earthy taste, so it's kind of associated with earth, and many things that are associated with earth are also associated with prosperity. I just kind of happen to know, because I've done a lot of prosperity work, that basil is associated with prosperity. So you can take a look at your recipe and go down and assign intentions to the foods and the spices of this recipe. Now, that doesn't mean you need to look at every spice and every food and everything has to line up to your intention. I mean, it'd be great if it does, but the important thing is that you can connect with that intention through this food. And then while you're cooking it, you can hold tight to that intention, and you can use visualization to help you go forward, to help put that energy of your intention into the food, so that when you eat it or when your family eats it, everybody is kind of internalizing your intention, which is why I think it's really important to try to not cook angry. If you're angry, like, you don't want that energy in the food. Like, you're literally, like, energy is kind of brought out by action. So if we're going to talk about different ways that we can raise energy, one of the ways that people raise energy is through movement. That could mean dance, that could mean gesture, that can mean, all kinds of things. So when we're moving and we're raising energy, that doesn't stop when we get into the kitchen. You're still moving, you're still stirring, and you're chopping, and you're doing all of these things. And your hands are literally, most of the time, in this food. And, and as you know, if you are consecrating things or you're charging things or you're doing energy work, a lot of times we use our hands because it's really easy to project and receive energy through our hands. So if you're mad, even if you're not meaning to put energy into things, you can. It can, I know a lot of people say, it's all about intention. And it kind of is, but really, like, your energy is going to do what it's going to do. So if you're mad and your hand, I mean, this is just my experience. If you're mad and you have your hands in things, like, that energy can totally easily be transferred even without meaning to be even if you're not meaning to transfer this energy. So be very mindful in the kitchen with what you're doing with your energy. And so you can take your recipe, you've looked at all the correspondences, you've decided how things, how the associations work. And again, you can either taste it and decide. You can think about if it's an animal, if it has wings and you want to do like if you're trying to work toward an air intention, or if it is like a ground sort of animal, maybe you're working with an earth intention. Same thing with vegetables. Is it something that grows really tall? It grows through the air. Is it something that bends with the wind? So consider all of these things when you're trying to decide what associations go with what foods or spices or whatever. So then you can dissect your recipe, and as you cook, you can infuse it with the intentions. Like when you're adding the basil, you know that you're adding this prosperity. And not only just go, I'm adding prosperity, but think about what that actually means to you as well. Because there's one way that really kind of can really, really increase energy is emotion. And emotions are fueled by thoughts, right? So there is going to be a stronger connection if I'm thinking about what prosperity means to me, if I am looking forward to and I can visualize in my mind a prosperous future. If I'm adding my basil, which is, I guess, my prosperity herb in this example, and I am thinking about how I know that I'm going to buy a boat this year. That's not my thing, but if it was I'm going to buy a boat this year, and I am visualizing my boat, and I'm, visualizing me and my husband super happy on our boat, and I'm sprinkling my basil. That's going to be a better energetic connection than just like, this is prosperity. That is great. You could totally do that. It might work. But if you want to increase the energy that you're putting into what you're doing, it's really good to find some way to emotionally connect to that intention. And most of the time, the best way to do that is through visualization. Okay, so I talked about cook the things that we mentioned: warming foods, warming cooking techniques. When we cook the techniques slow and slow, it makes the food easier to digest. Therefore, it allows more energy it allows our body to have more energy to do other things, because we're not using all of our energy to digest our food. So we talked about cooking those things. We talked about dissecting a recipe. Last thing I really want to talk about is finding a winner recipe to align with your intention. So I talked about you have recipes and dissecting it and looking at the different intentions that are represented within maybe your favorite recipes. However, you can do that, flip it around. You can have an intention, whether it's prosperity or love or harmony. I'm trying to think of things that I would like to add to my family, or happiness, etc. And then once you know that intention, you can think about the things in your kitchen that remind you of that. So if I'm thinking about happiness, I might think of like the sun and sunshine and maybe oranges, because again, we talked about how citrus is a winter fruit a lot of the time. So I might look for a recipe with citrus, because that's the first thing I thought about. So it's really important that you go with your intuition, because your intuition knows best, especially when it comes to creating associations in the kitchen. So think about your intention, think about what foods align with that intention, and then go forth and find a recipe that includes those foods that you're thinking about. And thank goodness for Pinterest. Thank goodness for the internet. I'm trying to think of I don't even know what I would do without the internet. I just started learning to cook 5 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I would ruin pasta. That's the kind of cook I used to be. But thank goodness for YouTube, because you can learn anything. I'm I don't know how to cut a butternut squash. I don't know how to cut a cantaloupe. Thanks, YouTube. So make sure you are using all of your resources. You've got Pinterest is a really good place to find recipes. Obviously, Google, your cookbooks, your family cookbooks. If you have any of those amazing like church family cookbooks or anything like that, those are great resources as well. Look for recipes that align with your intention. So again, going back to citrus, if I wanted to find a recipe that has to do with citrus and maybe some other warming, like roasting, I might make like something with an orange sauce, like roasted chicken or roasted duck with an orange sauce. Or I might do maybe some salmon with a lemon dill shallot sauce or something like that. So don't be afraid to break out of the recipes that you're used to cooking all of the time. But also, honestly, don't overdo it. Don't think like, oh, this has 16 ingredients and they all align with my intention and I'm going to do it after I come home from work. Like, don't make it too hard on yourself, honestly, because then you'll never want to do it again. I know that from experience. So look for simple recipes, and it's easy once you decide what your intention is and decide what foods align with your intention. It's easy to choose a recipe with those warming qualities to go forth and cook for your family and yourself. So that's basically it tonight. It's a short one tonight. And that's it. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to post your comment. You can tag me. Obviously, I'm super available in the Raising Fire tribe. So I will talk to you soon. Bye.